I'm Andy Malone. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. In this All You Need to Know, we're going to take a look at some cool security nuggets that you need to know in Microsoft 365. So stick with me and you might learn something. So obviously 2020, we're currently in lockdown. You've probably heard that there's been a massive increase in the number of phishing attacks. What is phishing? It's essentially known as a drive-by attack. So what hackers are trying to do is they've harvested or stolen usernames and passwords, and they try and drop something on you. You know, your Netflix account has been stolen, or you need to reset your password, or your account is about to expire. Typically, this type of attack comes with the fear factor. So it's trying to invoke a reaction. Now, one of the best pieces of advice that I could recommend is if you think you have been your username or password has been stolen, check out this website, Have I Been Pwned? So you can put in your email address here and it will give you a really quite in-depth report on any accounts that you know your usernames and passwords have been stolen. And very, very useful tool. So what Microsoft are really kind of focusing on at the moment is saying goodbye to passwords. And of course, one of the problems with passwords is it's typically something that you know. So I know a username, I know a password. Now the problem is if you find out my username and password, there's nothing to stop you logging in as me. So it proves that you know the username and password, but it doesn't prove who you are. So instead of that, what we do is we have a look at something that you have. So your mobile phone, for example, a smart card or a fingerprint or biometric. So this is something that you have. Also, you can have something that you are. Again, a fingerprint, facial recognition, handprint, something like that. And if you're using Azure Active Directory and Microsoft 365, you can deploy Windows Hello for Business in Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Another really useful feature, and if you want to know more about it, check out my videos on this channel on conditional access. So really useful. Okay, so one of the things that you can do right away, you can reduce the chances of bad guys stealing your username and password is by the use of something called MFA, multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, easy to set up. Again, I've covered it in other presentations on my channel, so check out that. But from an end user, it's really, really simple for an end user. So again, with multi-factor authentication, how does it work? How does the authentication flow work? Well, essentially the user logs in, either using an app or to a particular website. The website, once it takes the credentials, then says, hey, hang on, I need a little bit more information from you. STS means Secure Token Service, and AKA it's referring to Azure Active Directory. So the user is prompted for their credentials and it says, hey, I need something more. Now this could be your phone, it could be a token, it could be a fingerprint. Once you've presented this token, it gets then presented. For example, if you're using the Microsoft Authenticator app, which is a fantastic tool, by the way, you can then approve the sign-in on that device and it remembers you, and of course then the user then gets authenticated. So that's pretty much the authentication flow. So one of the things is I'm often asked is, oh, I don't need that, Andy, I'm perfectly secure. Trust me. This is a new feature from Microsoft, so if you have a Microsoft account or an Office account, definitely do this. Go to mysignins.microsoft.com and take a look. So can you see? So these are addresses. These are people trying to hack into my account. And you can see where they're coming from, okay? The IP addresses and where they're coming from. Now, the chances are most of this is automated. But the easiest way to protect yourself here is by using that multi-factor authentication. It will reduce the chances of you being hacked by about 90%, purely because the bad guy doesn't have your device. So easy to set up, very simple to set up. Go to aka.ms MFA setup. So simply here, just log into your user account, and it says, okay, I want to set up some additional security verification. So I say I want to use the mobile app. That's absolutely fine. And you can choose whether you want an authentication code or notification that you need to verify. So all I do is then say, yep, that's what I want to do. Then I click next in the wizard, and then using your mobile device, you'll get that authentication and approval notice. I simply click on approve. I get an authentication code, and of course that's it. So the connection is now made. So that phone is now associated with your account. And again, it's a good idea, just in case you don't have access to the app, you can put in the details here. If you lose access, you can put in your mobile phone just as an additional layer of security here. But again, really, really useful, and trust me, it will reduce the chances of you being hacked by over 90%. This is a very interesting technology. It's called the FIDO Alliance. It's a combination of manufacturers, Yubico, Microsoft, Google, and so on. And essentially, Microsoft are referring to this as passwordless authentication. And they come in two flavors, either an NFC key, so near field communications, or you can use a little key that's got a biometric fingerprint on it. So in this case, there is no username and password. It basically uses two keys, a private key and a public key. So a private key is stored on the device. The public key is stored with the provider. And I'm often asked, Andy, I'm not quite sure how that works. So let's say your public key is 55,000, okay? You can see it's 55,000, but the private key is the calculation. How did I get to that number, 55,000? 1 plus 500 plus... There'd be millions of potential outcomes. So that's public-private key cryptography. That's how it works. But the clever thing here is that the private key never leaves that FIDO2 key. Fantastic technology. Definitely check it out. So other tips and tricks, I'm going to talk about things like data retention in 365. So things that you can do to prevent your data being lost in Microsoft 365. And also I want to mention understanding encryption in 365 as well. So the first of those is retention policies. And retention policies, essentially what happens in this example on screen, you have a document library. So your OneDrive account, let's say. So if you delete a document from your document library, it essentially goes into the first stage recycle bin, and it will stay there for approximately 30 days. After that, it goes into a secondary recycle bin for a further 63 days. So for a total of 93 days. Beyond that, it's gone forever. Now, for security and compliance reasons, you may want to consider using retention policies. So, for example, the tax authority, it dictates that you need to keep documents for up to 7 years. So that means that anything from the tax authority, any attachments, any documents that come from the authority will automatically be labeled and retained for up to 7 years. Okay, at the end of that, of course, they can then be deleted. So information governance, and I'm talking about retention. So with retention, you have two options, labels and label policies. So I can go ahead and I can create my labels. So for example, here, I'll just put in here UK tax. Okay, so I'm going to create a label called UK tax. And it's saying here, okay, so the tax, how long do you want to keep this data for? So you can specify 5 years, 1 year, months, days, whatever. And you can say retain the content based on either when it was created or when it was last modified. So it will be, let's say, for example, you save it today, but you change it in the 1st of December. So in that case, if it's set to that, it will be 7 years from the 1st of December. You understand? And if that document changes every year, it will roll forward 7 years. Okay, get the idea? So you can either do it, just retain it for 7 years. At the end of it, do you want to delete it after that time? Yes or no? Or you could say, okay, no, just delete the content if it's older than a year or 7 years. And again, you can say when it was last modified or when it was created. All right. So the other thing that you might want to do here is you might want to say, you can say, set me, do you want to delete it after this time? I can do that. So you basically got that choice. There are some advanced settings. So again, in here with the advanced settings, there are a few more options. So things like, documents that contain specific words or specific types of content or sensitive information. All right. So nice feature. So going to create that label. And now it says, okay, what data do you want to protect? So for the purpose of this demo, you can switch some of these features off. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to say, yeah, I want to retain everything. Okay. So, so I'm going to go ahead and create this label policy. Sorry, correction, this label. And now I can go into a label policy. So these are my label policies, and I've got a policy here called global IT. So the other thing that I can now do is I can now specify to which users this label gets applied to. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the Security Admin Center, and I'm going to come down into Data Privacy, and we have the GDPR dashboard here. And the GDPR dashboard, you've got a toolbox, lots of resources and really kind of useful stuff. But in here, you can also create a DSR case, a data subject request. So a data subject request, for example, if I've got a user called, let's say, James Kirk, okay, I'll click next. And which user do you want to create one? So again, I've got Captain Kirk. So I'm going to add in Captain Kirk. You can do it for multiple users. I click on next and save. And I can say, right, now it will go off and it will search everything for Captain Kirk. And you can specify what do you want, email messages, documents, instant messaging. You can specify and you can add conditions as well. So, if he's a member of the marketing group or this. Now, obviously, this user has no content, but if it did, what I would then do is save that search and then export that. So you can see all his content would be exported out. I could then hand it to him on a plate. So that's essentially how you do a data subject request in Microsoft 365. Okay. Encryption. So encryption is really important. So basically, if you're using email, by default, it uses a TCP/IP port called port 25. Port 25 is completely wide open and anybody can basically see it. So potentially, if you don't have any encryption on your network, essentially, you could be easily hacked. So a couple of things that Microsoft 365 have in the product. One of these is called S-MIME, Secure MIME. MIME means multi-purpose internet mail extensions, by the way. And it's based on using digital certificates. So that concept of that public and private key. So basically the idea is here is that the user, the sender, signs a message with their private key, and I know your email address because I know your public key. So I send the message to your public key, and only you can open it with your private key. That's how it works. All right. Now, a really smart piece of encryption is built into Microsoft 365, and it's called Office 365 Message Encryption. And what it does, it's an online service, and it uses Azure Rights Management capabilities. So if I send an email to you, basically what happens is it encrypts the message. It sends a HTML attachment to you. So you can see in the graphic here, the user sends the email. Oops, just come back to that slide. The message is filtered and it's then encrypted with 365. When the recipient receives the message, the email comes in, but it comes in as a HTML attachment. The user then has to go through an authentication process to prove who they are. So once they've been authenticated, the message is then released to that user. It's a fantastic service, by the way. Definitely check it out. So there you have it, just a quick look at some of the other, what I think are some of the cool security features in 365. And of course, there are many more, and I'm going to spend a lot of time in future doing some videos. In the meantime, check out my other YouTube videos on these very topics. And what can I say? You can also visit my website, andymalone.org, and I've got a blog with lots of information and links and stuff up there. I'm on Twitter at Andy Malone, and of course, you can click on that YouTube page there. So there you have it. It's cool security features of Microsoft 365. Just what I think are some of the golden nuggets of knowledge that you kind of really need to get in your head. So I hope you found this session interesting and useful. And remember, if you have, click on the subscribe button above there. Leave your comments because I love to know what you really think. Okay. Coming up, we've got some fantastic sessions, so make sure that you come back to my channel again. In the meantime, I'm Andy Malone. See you next time.